I don't want to see your name on this list again. This story didn't personally happen to me, but it was told by someone I trust. I fully believe it to be true. But some details are slightly altered to protect privacy. A friend of mine is retired now, but back in the day he did internal audits for a large bank. This story takes place about 30 years ago when networked computers were less common, and paperwork tended to be compiled manually. Bank managers had to submit various reports to their regional offices showing what their branches were up to, and the regional offices would occasionally send out auditors to go through the records and make sure everything was in compliance. One report that had to be filed monthly was a list of any employees who were in arrears on their own loans. Employees who had trouble managing their own credit were considered to be more at risk of stealing, fraud, or other financial crimes. So I guess the bank wanted to keep track of anyone who may fall into that category. My friend's team is doing an audit at a particular branch, going through the records and looking for any discrepancies. They find a big one. The manager of this branch had been behind on a number of loans he held with the bank, but had been leaving his own name off the report. More records are pulled and they start looking at everything this guy has ever filed and comparing it to other records. The manager had started doing everything correctly, including himself on the report fairly regularly. At a point about 10 years previous, it suddenly stops despite the spotty loan repayment continuing for years. Bosses of bosses are called. It's looking like they may have stumbled on years of falsified records and possibly more serious fraud. The manager is definitely getting fired, and depending on what else they find, looking at some serious criminal charges. Finally, they call the manager in to show what they found and ask for an explanation. The manager produces a letter from someone higher up in the bank. Basically, when he started, the manager was just a little too free with his spending and didn't make his monthly loan payments a top priority. His boss wrote a letter saying that having the manager of a bank branch at the top of a list of unpaid loans was an embarrassment. If he wanted to keep his job, he better make sure that his name never appeared on that report again. He was supposed to sort out his financial affairs, but the manager said he interpreted the instruction literally and simply stopped including his own name. It took years before anyone noticed. In the end, the investigation found no other signs of record tampering or financial crime. No one really believed that he actually thought what he was doing was allowed. But the whole thing was just ambiguous enough to give plausible deniability. By the point everything was discovered, the manager had his finances in good order, and he was pretty close to retirement. The whole thing was just sort of waved away as being more trouble than it was worth to deal with, and the manager didn't see any real repercussions. Just like that kid whose parents told him they didn't want him to bring home any more tests with bad grades. So, he didn't bring those home from then on. I forgot where that was from, but probably from this sub. Ferengi Rule of Acquisition number 27, there's nothing more dangerous than an honest businessman. What if the same bank opened a credit card without your permission, said it was overdraft protection, and destroyed your credit over an unpaid balance around $50? Fu HSBC. Parent, teacher. I better not see you doing that again, kid. Okay, I'll make sure you don't see me. Employees who had trouble managing their own credit were considered to be more at risk of stealing, fraud, or other financial crimes. I have to say, if there's banks that have this policy today, especially with their tellers, they must have a revolving door of new hires or else be paying $30 per hour and up. Good credit? In this economy? Tears of joy. That's because only poor people are thieves. They'll rob you again and again. Enron. Wow. He's like a financial wrong way Corrigan. Way to play it straight and literal. Retired friend of an internet stranger. Nameless and blameless. Sergeant Schultz. I see nothing. Nothing. Quote. Dude should have gotten more proof of boss's snobbery emo. Otherwise, well played manager. Was afraid it may involve blinding someone. I have never been stupid enough to put myself in debt with a bank. Perhaps I'd be a perfect candidate for bank staff? I mean, I've never used credit a day in my life, so I wonder how they would look at that. I certainly am not rich. I don't have any savings to speak of. But all in all, I break even with a little surplus here and there. Never enough to save, but maybe enough for a few nights out a month with friends. In 1994, I dated a woman who worked for a bank whose initials were close to Grab. Funny. Writing it out like that inadvertently spelled a word I would typically associate with a bank. She got me a staff account not long after and a staff credit card. The staff account had 0 service charges, generous interest rates, and the CC a ridiculously low rate. Our relationship lasted about 9 years. But we parted amicably, and she never told the bank we'd split. Summer of 2019, I get a letter from them basically saying, "Hey, wait a minute, you're not staff." The letter says my staff account privileges are revoked effective immediately. But it takes another 2 years. And another, "Hey, wait a minute," letter for it to actually happen. I closed my accounts and moved my considerable investment holdings not long afterwards to consolidate them with my wife. Thanks Grab Bank. Interesting anecdote on Grab Bank. They were featured in a Netflix episode of Dirty Money for laundering almost $1 billion in Mexican drug cartel money. My free service charges weren't hurting them. This isn't the purpose of malicious compliance. Retelling, gloating about higher-ups getting away with financial crimes should only be here as a hint for the local branch manager that closed my account. If it provides actionable information for people with fewer resources. Am I mistaken or just triggered? Lots of weird exceptions to circumstances. Life is so funny and awesome that way.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Haircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.